Okay, so over recent years there's been quite a few films that have had conclusions, series which have had conclusions which I don't think were handled in the best way, and I think there were simple writing tactics which could have been used to kind of fix this. Um, One word I'd say is narrative. The narrative structure can sometimes fly amiss, where through, should we say, 1 to 4 seasons it was great, and then between 5 to 8 it completely forgot where it was going, where it was doing, and what characters were even involved. I'm not naming any specific series there at all, which I might go back to in a minute, but narrative is something that should flow seamlessly throughout the film's story, either series, film, like I've said, but also character development. For a film, you've got, say, usually an hour and a half to 2 hours of character. In a single film, that character development can maybe sometimes seem strange, sometimes seem very little, but on a mainstream film, they're usually quite good at actually developing a character story through the narrative. Now, say, I'm going to throw this out here because I'm a massive nerd. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, what are we on, 20 plus films now of all these different characters. And throughout each one, we get a little bit of character throughout. I mean, let's take Thor, for example. His character goes from kind of dour god of people. He's arrogant. He acts like a child when he goes off to war with the ice giants. And then by Ragnarok, he's kind of jokey, but he's kind of seen the world a bit more, become a bit more relatable to the people around him. And he understands the struggles. And he seems like a much better character for the events that he's actually been through. Same again for Tony Stark's Iron Man from the first film. Again, an arrogant playboy, philanthropist, billionaire, you catch my drift, until the end game where, no spoilers, but even in the beginning you can see he's settled down with a family, and he is completely different from the man we met when he was blown up and turned into Iron Man in the first film in 2008. So that's character development. That's how these characters are developed, but that's over 10 years, so that's 10 years you've got to give the franchise for its longevity and the fact that it's able to build that through each different film. I mean, they've each had 3 films each, but then you've got like little mini performances. Tony's in Spider-Man Homecoming, and that again gives him a chance to build his character. He appears here and there in different ones. So as a normal film, an hour and a half to 2 hours, you get a decent amount of character development, and that's standard. With the MCU, you've got over 20 films, that's about 50 hours, say, roughly, to develop all these characters and build them up on the screen. And in Game of Thrones, you had 8 seasons. It was meant to be 10 if they'd have actually done it properly, as Vice and Benioff were offered, but they chose not to because they wanted to do other things. Let's talk about the other things later. But the things that they were doing at the beginning was Game of Thrones. 8 seasons. That might have been what they planned for all along. That might have been a new thing that they decided midway. But series 1, 2, 3 and 4. Great. They had the books to follow. They had George R. R. Martin kind of loosely guiding them along the page. 1 to 4, a great series. I didn't argue 5. 5 has some great moments. I mean, you've got the Mountain the Viper and Oberyn the Viper. It's backflips. Badass. But from that point you lose the kind of script it's followed, and when it gets to season 8 you really feel that. I mean, I'm just going to spoil the hell out of Game of Thrones because I don't really care that much about it anymore, and I don't imagine anyone who's seen it or even has heard about it recently does care. So let's take The Bells for example, the penultimate episode of Game of Thrones. You have Daenerys is storming King's Landing. They're fighting on the streets. They're winning. They are winning that war. And then you think this is going too well. It's Game of Thrones. Obviously something jarring is going to happen. But that jarring feature comes from almost, I'd say, a betrayal of the character, in a sense. Because Daenerys, through seasons 1 to 7, she's got a fiery temper. She is a fiery character, but she's also a very humane character. She understands people suffering and the hardships they've gone through. She understands when she liberates Slavers Bay and she takes all the slaves that have been nailed up she takes them all down, and in their place, which is quite cruel but at the same time a just punishment to her, she puts all the slavers who put them up there in their place. So harsh but just. That's always been Daenerys' thing. She's fiery like a dragon, but also she's the mother of dragons. She is greeted everywhere she goes with the mother by all the slaves and people who want to be freed. And this image, it's summed up by Tyrion as it's always the kind of bad guy she's burning, that's why we don't say anything about it. And to a certain extent, I agree with what Tyrion says. It is right what Tyrion says, but at the same time, there's the whole character development which is very severely betrayed in this moment, this one moment. I mean, even before up to this, there have been several points where, I mean, when one of the dragons dies, it's said in one of the interviews that she completely forgot the Iron Fleet existed. Don't understand that, but so there are issues, but that's just Game of Thrones in general. There's one scene in which they've won the battle. The Battle of King's Landing is won. It's fine. I mean, if this is any other show, it'd be the end of the series and a happy ending, and Jon would probably become king somehow, Daenerys would be queen, and that's it, Game of Thrones. This is Game of Thrones, however, and because they like to, subvert expectations, I think that's the term that these idiots coined. I'm going to call them idiots because, I mean, this was just so jarring. You've got Daenerys, this character's been built, as I said, mother to all. She's always very described as kind of the people's hope by Varys and Tyrion. They've been bouncing in a corner for a few seasons now, and when the reveal of Jon comes along, they start bouncing around because it has to happen like that, and there has to be some kind of tension. Seems like that was it because his plot went literally nowhere. Him king. Anyway, there's a scene in the bells. The bells are ringing. They've won. The bells are ringing, and it triggers Daenerys to go a bit mental. Now, there's a joke or probably a logical point in the series saying now that the gods flip a coin every time a Targaryen's born, and it's either if they're mad or if they're sane. And apparently it was sane up until this point in time when she had a bell ringing and she decided to slaughter 1,000 people. Or 1,000. Probably about a bajillion people. Because, okay, I can understand this point. If she flew to the Red Keep, in her anger, she burnt Cersei and everyone around her, that's fine. You go, girl, you do what you gotta do. But the fact is, she decided to do a tour of destruction across the streets of King's Landing, killing everyone, small children, elderly people, anyone who got in her way, because reasons in the plot and more tension needed to be built. And that is my main, in a nutshell, point about narrative and character development. I mean, throughout the 8 seasons, we had this kind of narrative structure which was, a subvert of expectations here. And I think because that worked so well with the Red Wedding and other little bits, and Ned Stark being beheaded, the directors and writers, or whatever they are, took that to the extreme and thought that was the main point that people watched Game of Thrones, and because of that, that's good for the narrative, we'll subvert their expectations, and then they won't expect that. And so at the end of the episode and the end of the season, we're left with Daenerys being killed by Jon Snow because they subverted that expectation, and then you have Bran on the Iron Throne for some reason because he came all this way apparently. You have Arya and Sansa going off. Arya goes off on magical journeys on a ferry. Sansa goes up north and becomes Queen of the North, and Jon is beyond the wall because plot reasons, and he's king in the north, but not really king in the... God knows, he's king of the wild people, who cares? Anyway, narrative, character development. 2 things I feel that Game of Thrones were really let down by was the fact that these characters were kind of thrown aside to literally subvert expectations. And I'm going to completely left wing here. If you take a film like 500 Days of Summer, that is a romantic comedy completely separate from the MCU and Game of Thrones and nerd culture in general. I mean, it's got Joseph Gordon-Levitt, still kind of nerdy. Anyway, the film has these two couple kind of fall in love essentially, and you see the build up of the relationship, you see the trials, complications of the relationship, and then there's a lot that goes on. Oh, Agent Coulson, he's in that film, 500 Days of Summer. Agent Coulson. If you haven't seen it, that's why you should see it. Anyway, so they're having their kind of bickering, normal lover stuff, and it gets to a point where they break up. If it was a romantic comedy, there'd be an event like some kind of wedding, and then there'd be a big build-up. He'd win a battle with a song. Am I just explaining the film Wedding Singer now? I think I might be. Haven't seen that in a while. It's Adam Sandler. Anyway, that doesn't happen. These two characters kind of meet up again, and you have the amazing expectations versus reality scene where you see his expectations and then the reality, and they don't blend very well for, I think isn't his name Tom? They don't blend well for Gordon Levitt's character, and he is sad. He is sad at the end of the film because he finds out she's getting married, and this isn't how it goes. This isn't how these films end. These romantic comedies usually end with happiness and everyone's, oh, they're in love, and that is not how this film ends. And in a way, it's a subvert of expectations, but in a good way. I mean, I'm not angry at the ending. Like, I feel it also had messages in. It had a good narrative where you see this relationship, but you see why it wouldn't be so good, and you see kind of how it develops. Again, the narrative develops, and along with it, so do the characters. And their characters shining through show you that these characters wouldn't be good for each other. Again, it's completely left wing from Game of Thrones, but it also fits very well with the fact that it subverts expectations, but it does it in the best way. With the ending, doesn't make you angry. It doesn't make you hate-filled and rageful that these characters have been betrayed by the narrative, and that one line in the series is, if you're expecting a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention. These characters got a happy ending, if I'm not mistaken, the majority of them. I mean, what, Jon Snow was banished to the north. I think that was the worst it got for them. There's a scene in one of the episodes, I think it's A Long Night, where you see 7 characters up against a wall, all being mushed up by the army of the dead, who would kill and slaughter everyone. And in this scene, they all have the plot armor, which is something that carries on, and what made the subverting of expectations amazing in the previous show, seasons, was the fact that there was no plot armor. These characters died, just randomly were killed, because it was the story of the show, and it felt gritty. It felt kind of a realistic historical drama, but by the end of it, you got to soap opera levels of 5 people all fighting off against this army of the dead that we're supposed to be so terrified of, and literally side characters die. So the show subverts expectations, or tries to subvert expectations, as in Game of Thrones. It doesn't have these narrative streaks of greatness in the last, I'd say, 3 seasons. I'd go so far as to stretch to 4 seasons, but series 4 to 8 are the series which leave it in the kind of dirt, and I don't want it to be remembered for that, but I have a horrible feeling it will be. Going completely off wing again, if we take Attack on Titan. Attack on Titan's an amazing anime. Haven't read too far into the manga, so I'm not sure how it's looking as it starts to kind of wind up, as we're apparently getting the ending to that in the manga and the anime next year. But again, it is a show which kind of develops as it goes. While the characters kind of grow in their own time, it might be because where the manga develops a bit more, the anime kind of speeds through these events happening. But the events happening are exciting, and characters do die, and you don't think, my god, that was shocking, but like completely outside of the net, like, it felt shocking, but for the wrong reasons. It was a side character which no one cared about. These are characters which, like, are shown, and some of the ways these characters die are really vicious, but it adds to that kind of tension that's always in the air. And I compare these to Attack on Titan and Game of Thrones because that tension was there in the early seasons of Game of Thrones. There's that uncomfortable feeling as you watch it that anything could happen. And Attack on Titan really does show this, because anything does happen. And there is a plot point which happened recently at the end of this anime series, which I think season series 3. And something that people have been waiting for quite a long time, that's the basement reveal. The basement is a key that is given to Eren, and he's told that secrets to humanity lie in this basement, which is an area currently inaccessible to these characters. But we are told of its importance, and because of it, it gives kind of the plot this kind of something to revolve around, in essence, other than the side things going on with Colossal Titans, Armored Titans, Female Titans. So it's got that kind of overarching stuff with the Titans, and then but you've always got this. But what's in the basement? What is in the basement? You want to know, and you get the answer to that fairly soon if you haven't seen it. But there is an answer, and it's great. It doesn't go, "This is the answer," and shove it in your face. It's very subtle the way it's done, and that in itself is amazing because it's such a big deal, and then the next few episodes kind of follow on from that reveal. But even the way the characters react, they kind of like, "What's this? I don't." And then one thing that's great is these moments that Attack on Titan brings you, and you go like, "But wait, that means," and it just blows up in your mind, and the possibilities become like crazy, and that kind of overarches my whole opinion on narrative and character development. Is that, say, if you take Game of Thrones, the narrative is great up to an extent where it has a script go behind George R. R. Martin, and then with Attack on Titan you have this, again, manga and anime going along, but the points there are, there's a tension that kind of builds and builds and builds, and it doesn't let that tension up. Even in the current series, there's still moments where you do feel that, and when that kind of starts being pushed aside, it gives you more, like, it gives you a whole new kind of landscape to play with in that story wise, that kind of you get drawn even more into. But wait, what's going on with that? Where Game of Thrones petered out because they wanted to subvert expectations, and they took all their characters and completely wrong turns, like Jaime Lannister. Let's not go into that because that one's so 500 Days of Summer, Attack on Titan, Endgame, all great kind of ways into how the narrative is structured and actually gone along and been built up by writers that actually care about what they've done. Game of Thrones had that and lost it, and I feel arguably the same can be said of Star Wars. And Star Wars, you've got The Last Jedi. Well, if we start with The Force Awakens, it was good. It was A New Hope remade in new kind of ways. If it was A New Hope, it was made today. Essentially, that's what Force Awakens is. So it was good, but it was familiar. So then they did The Last Jedi. There are bits I like of The Last Jedi, but a lot more that I don't. And with it, got me worried about the future of Star Wars, because it felt like these plots that were kind of brought up were very J.J. Abrams, in that there was no real resolution to these points, and that kind of scared me, because now we're going into the 9th one, which is the final episode in the whole Star Wars saga, and I don't care. I don't care where it's going or why it's going there, because I don't relate to Kylo Ren or Rey with their issues. Their characters are designed well, but written on screen, bland. Very bland. I mean, Kylo Ren's got a bit more going on than Rey, but even then, if you compare him to Vader, he's a side note. And I think that again sums up, in general, my feeling about character development narrative. With these characters, Rey, Finn, Poe, all of them, we're kind of shown them for a minute and then bang, onto the action again. And it's, but hang on, who are these characters I'm rooting for? What is the Resistance? Why do we care about the First Order? Where do they come from? Who's Snoke? What is Kylo Ren? Is he Sith Lord? Doesn't explain that. So yeah, J.J. Abrams very questiony. Add that to Rian Johnson, who just wanted to give a good film, and you had plots being revolved around the idea that Rey is no one, doesn't come from anywhere, which is fine if it wasn't kind of set up that she was someone. So character development and narrative are the two things I'm basically talking about here, as how to make a good story and how to finish a story, because I don't think episode 9 I could be wrong. I could eat my own hat and it could be good, but I'm not overly confident. Anyway, we'll see in December, but that's pretty much all I had to say. Yeah, maybe stick to better writing. Yeah. Thanks.